are 3 things you can do to help us out.
1, you can make sure you subscribe to this channel.
2 is you can leave a comment here or on Apple Podcasts.
And 3, if you really want to help, you can follow this link to see how you could be a supporter on Patreon.
Word in Your Attic, a Zoom with a view.
Welcome to another Word in Your Attic, where we're joined by an old pal of the pod, the magnificent singer and songwriter Boo Hewerdine. Boo, it's fantastic to see you.
Hello.
And in fact, where do we find you now?
You find me in Glasgow these days. Me and my wife moved here two and a half years ago because we love it. But we used to live in a little village outside of Ely, and it was the most unfriendly place in the world. I'm not going to name it.
Don't name names.
No, I won't name. But the last Christmas they were there. Bear in mind, it's a village. There were 3 ram raids on Christmas Day. That's how unfriendly it was. And the house that we lived in, which was a big rambly old shop, only after we'd bought it, we found out that a previous owner had kept his dead mother in what was our bedroom for 11 years and collected her pension. Yeah.
Oh, grief. That doesn't come up in the checks, searches.
No, it doesn't.
Right, yeah.
You can talk about damp and stuff. You can't talk about dead mothers and pensions.
But you didn't know that till just when you were selling the house.
We knew that shortly after we moved in, because we lived in what was called the old bicycle shop. And then if you'd say to people, "Oh, I'm new in the village. Where have you moved to?" And you say, "Oh, the old bicycle shop," and they'd sort of back away from you, So.
Oh no, you're kidding!
And then we looked it up on the old internet, and friends of mine knew about it and remember seeing it on the news. It was a man called Bill Cox, but somehow we'd avoided finding that out. So.
Oh Lord! So you had to live with that.
Yeah. I don't believe in spookiness, but it wasn't very nice, So that
nice. Probably wasn't a room that was used much. I don't know.
Well, it was our bedroom, yeah.
Your bedroom. Oh my Lord!
Oh. So we moved.
So you moved sweet dreams, yeah.
Sweet, yeah. So we moved here, and the consequence of that is, because for your podcast, is that we live in a lovely flat, but it's a bit smaller than the big rambling murder house. So all our stuff is in a lockup in East Anglia. So I can't really show you stuff. And I totally intended to make a little presentation for you, and I started, and the printer ran out of ink last night. And one of the things I was going to tell you about was the first single I bought, which was when I was very young and foolish, was Chelsea Blue is the Colour, and I made a picture of them there.
Oh, that's great!
But it's like, because of the printer, it looks like a really good bit of art, doesn't it?
Yes, it does.
But I was very young and stupid, and I didn't know they were a football team. I just thought they were a very, very large group. So
seriously,
yes.
So when is blue is the colour? When is this the 70s, presumably?
Yes, it is. I was about 10 or something. I've made an effort. So
take us back to that. So you were born in London, I think, but did you grow up? Where was it? Cambridge? Was it Cambridge?
No, I was in London until I was 14 or so.
Till you're 14. Okay.
So the first records that I had, Can
you remember the parental record playing machinery?
I do, but more importantly was that a neighbour gave my dad a sort of dance set thing with some singles, and those were the first singles that I had. And I thought I'd look them up, and there's so many facts these days, aren't there? Do you know what I mean? It's like when we were young, there were like a few facts.
Yes.
500 years ago, there were no facts. So low.
Although you managed to move house without finding out one
one key fact seems to have
I feel that they kept it from us, and I have to be honest, the people who bought it from us, we may have kept it from them as well. So
well, if they're watching this in the unlikely event, happy days.
Yeah. So
anyway, sorry, carry on.
Yeah, so I got this dance set type thing, and So I remembered. I tried to remember the first singles that were there. I didn't buy them; they were just there. One was "Seven Little Girls Sitting in the Backseat" by the Avons. Do you remember that one?
Kids singing and hugging with Fred.
Fred.
Yeah.
Yes.
The Avons.
The Avons.
Yeah.
Exactly. Very, very, very weird. So I looked up some facts about the Avons, and this is my favourite fact. So
Go on.
you'll like this fact. It's so weird. Perhaps you can explain it to me. So they had their hit with the Seven Little, very weird, and then they were asked to be in represent the UK in the 1960 Eurovision Song Contest with a song called where is it? Picking Petals, which I listened to. It's nice, but their participation was cancelled due to a European Broadcast Union rule that stated that trios could not compete. What's that rule? What's that rule for? We've got the Supremes for you. No. It's like what stupid rule is that?
Why? What possible reason?
It doesn't say. I wondered if you knew if
I've never heard that one before.
Well, that's a good rule, isn't it?
It's a good one.
God, the Avons, that's another in our series of records that you couldn't put out these days.
No, you couldn't really.
It was originally a hit in America. That
It
was.
was. I couldn't remember. It was. Yeah, I can't remember. Because
We're having fun, sitting in the back seat, kissing and hugging with Fred.
The thing is, as well,
keep your hands on the driving, keep your eyes on the road, keep something
keep
on
your
the
Snoopy,
road ahead.
Keep your Snoopy
on the road ahead.
Yeah,
we're having fun. That's the idea.
That's it.
Yes, it's all addressed to the.
As you're driving the car.
As you point out, it was originally a hit in America, and in America they have very large cars, so you probably could get 7 people in the back seat, but not in a early 60s. It'd be impossible. People would die. Well, there were 7 originally. I don't know. Anyway. Oh, right. Now.
That's good. What else? It's very kind of you to get these facsimiles. You don't need to have done that. It's very good.
There's only one. So then I'm going to keep going because I don't see why not.
Imagine the amount of coloured printing ink capsules you've used up.
No, there was only one. It ran out while I was doing the first one. So, so as ink does, So then, and also there was Emil Ford. What do you want to make those eyes at me for?
Oh, yes.
Emil Ford and the Checkmate.
Yeah. That's right. Yeah. So I looked up Emil Ford, and he had that thing. What's that called? Synesthesia or something, where you hear colours or whatever it is.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
You hear colours. I like it.
Yes, but he invented the technology that led to karaoke. That's good. That's a good fact, isn't it?
That's a very good fact.
Very good fact.
This has been a
richly
very educational day.
Facts are really important. So, and then I'm nearly done.
Patent that?
Well, yeah, he did, and yes, and he moved all over the world and started various sort of backing track companies and stuff, and that's what he did. There was "Let There Be Drums" by Sandy.
Oh, Sandy Nelson.
It's a great record.
I love that record.
Brilliant record. And as I just remembered this, but he only had, sadly only had one foot, didn't he? Which is pretty amazing for a drummer.
Did he?
Yes.
Did he really?
What happened to his other foot?
I don't know because I didn't look that up. I just know that. What happened to Sandy Nelson's other foot? I don't know. I've let you down.
And me could do better.
And the one that was probably my favourite, and I'll stop after that, is Frank Ifield, I Remember You. So I had to listen to that last night. It's really short. It's just 2 minutes long.
Right.
And so I looked up facts about him, and the only interesting fact that is he had an illness, which he didn't say later, that it said that meant that he couldn't yodel for 12 years. So
No.
So you might have. It occurred to me that you two might have had that illness, but you'd never know because you wouldn't try and yodel, would you? You
don't look at a man in the street and think, "Poor guy, he hasn't yodeled for 11 years."
I know.
It must be tough.
When you
That's
think about
amazing.
Frank Ifield was a hit. It was number one just before the Beatles, wasn't it?
Yes, he was. And all of these records are just pre-Beatles records, aren't they?
just pre-Beatles.
Yeah.
And
Career's blown out of the water.
and he was a really big deal, wasn't he? Because he sang kind of country songs, didn't he?
He
But
did.
his gimmick was he yodeled
Yes.
in the middle of the.
Yeah.
Do you remember the name of his film? Have you ever seen his film?
Oh no. What's his film called?
It's called Boo. I'd recommend this to you. Go and find it on YouTube. It's called Up Jump to Swag Man.
Oh,
All right,
he was
because it's Australian.
Australian,
It was.
yes.
And it opens with a shot of him busking in Trafalgar Square while wearing a bush hat to identify him as Australian.
Oh, excellent.
Again, now if you did that today, you'd be lynched, wouldn't you?
Well, I don't know if you'd be
For
lynched.
cultural stereotyping, it would be lynched, but it would be popular.
Well, that's a bit harsh. A lynch.
Yeah.
So all your possessions are in a lockup in East Anglia.
They are, yes. All my prized records and stuff. So I'm going to just have to tell you through the power of
Go on,
speech.
give us some more. This is brilliant. Where did you buy your records? Can you remember?
Well, I was trying to remember that. It was like a sort of that I lived in Edgware then. I was when I grew up, and it was I don't know. It was just one of those shops that had records and also probably sort of chemists.
Yeah. They had a little record department. Electrical shops were the ones.
Yeah, it's an electrical shop. Probably was something like that.
Go and buy 2-bar electric heaters. And there was a little guy in the corner selling singles.
That's exactly right. So that was the first one. So I bought Blues. It's not very good, is it? So I put me off buying records for a while. I later found out that the guy who used to drum for me, a man called Rob Peters, who used to be in Everything But the Girl, but his uncle wrote that. That's not an interesting fact, but it's true. So I didn't buy records for a while, and the first album I bought was Ian Hunter's solo album. So I was probably about 13 in. I left it for a couple of years, and I love that.
Which Ian Hunter solo?
What was it called?
It's called Ian Hunter, and it's got Once Bitten, Twice Shy on it. And it's him and it's him and Mick Ronson, and I always had really fond memories of it. And then I thought, oh, shall I buy it again? And I did that a couple of years ago. It's really good. It's really, really, really good. I really enjoyed it. And so I thought, well, that's good. That's really good. And then the second album I bought was Sgt. Pepper. I thought, well, that's good. And then I thought, oh, albums are good, aren't they? And then I then
a lot of disappointment ahead here.
Exactly.
That's where you start.
I know it started with it, and then I think the next one was Dark Side of the Moon because all my friends were a bit proggy at school. So and then years and years of disappointment. So
when did you first start playing?
Oh, I didn't play. I wanted to make up songs. I did. That's what I wanted to do, and I didn't start playing the guitar until I was nearly 19. But I would make up songs and sing. I did a mental thing. I would go and sing them to local groups, just stand in their front room until I've made up a song, and they would sing them. So
give us some song titles. I love all this stuff.
That was. This is very deep. It's very deep. I'm so surprised. I think the first one was called "Time Is a Magnet." But it's not, is it?
Lord. This is you when you were, 14 or something?
I think I was 14 then, yeah. I mean, at that point, Stevie Wonder was writing My Sherry, wasn't it? And I was my thoughts on time and magnets. Yeah. And, oh, gosh, I can't even... There's one called The Truth, a band did. Anyway, so I did that for a bit, and then I joined a bunch of people. Here's an amazing fact. The first band I was in, the guitar player, by pure coincidence, I live in a square in Glasgow, and he's lived all over the world. He's lived in Sydney. He's lived in Birmingham. Shortly after I moved here, he moved in over the way. So we see each other every day. It's really strange.
What are the chances?
It's incredible, isn't it?
Yeah.
So
you just used to approach local groups and say, yes. I've got a song.
Yes.
And then you stood there and sung it.
Yes, that's exactly.
And they performed these songs.
Some of them
into this.
Not all of them. Some of them would politely ask me to leave, but occasionally. Not now. Occasionally they would, and then and then I started learning guitar so I could be in the first band. And then the first band I was in. He's Peter, he's over there, but there was another guy whose name was Geordie's, and his real name's John, but we called him Geordie. I don't know why. I have no idea why. I should ask him. But we didn't see each other for 40 years, and he's just come back into my life because he's been living in Hong Kong and for a long time. And I played in London last weekend or the weekend before, and he came, and it's just fantastic. But he was a brilliant songwriter, and so it got very competitive between him and me. And I owe him a lot because it was like he'd bring something to a rehearsal and they're really good songs. So I go away and think, well, I've got to do better than that. So yeah.
So that first group you were talking about, was that they're mostly playing your material? Were you doing covers?
No, we never did covers. No, it was just a thing that we had to write. That was the thing, and that was because of John, I think.
Yeah.
So I think Peter over there, he wrote one song, which was probably our best song, but he didn't write very many. But all three of us would write songs, and that was. And then the drummer, our drummer he ended up being the drummer in my band, The Bible. But in between that, you probably remember the Roaring Boys. He was in them.
Right.
We remember the Roaring Boys very vividly. Yeah, they were. What were they meant to be? A kind of cross between. It was Adamant singing and Duran Duran or something, wasn't it?
I don't know.
There was some kind of. Were they based in Cambridge? I think
they were. Yes, there were two venues, one above the other. There was the Sound Cellar, which was underground, and there was a gig directly above it called the Great Northern. And you were either a Sound Cellar band or a Great Northern band, and we were a Sound Cellar band, so we ignored them. And David, the drummer, was really disloyal. He left the cellar and went up there and joined them. But he came crawling back.
Never forgiven. No, he has been forgiven. Yeah.
No, of course not. And he came back, and there was, as did Neil, who was Neil McCall, the great Neil McCall, who was in that band as well, and still doing incredible things now. So yeah.
So you found yourself living in the same place as somebody you were in a band with 40 years ago. Is that what you said?
No. Yes. That's
just across the square. Yeah.
Did you just see each other across the road?
No, because
hang on.
No, not quite. We have been in contact, and
right, okay.
And so, but it wasn't. It's still a complete fluke that we live where we live. You know,
yeah.
Which is lovely. So I went for a walk with him yesterday, and he's still playing a lot, and he sent me some garage band files for me to look at, and I'll put some bass on it, and we chat every day. But we would do that anyway when we lived miles apart. So it's lovely. Yeah.
Can you remember groups that you saw, when you were a kid?
Yeah,
that
totally.
Had some real impact on you.
Totally. The first proper.
What was the first gig you went to?
The first proper gig I went to was Dr. Feelgood, around the time of Stupidity. Amazing.
What fun!
It was amazing.
Was that the grubby white suit and all that? And,
the grubby white suit. The
Wilco machine gunning the audience. Yeah,
it was just mentally brilliant and exciting. And I'd already, there had been someone at school who had come in, I can't remember his name, but he'd come in saying, I've heard the record. And it was down by the jetty. And I loved it. I absolutely loved it. And it was, huge night for me. So again, like with albums, I thought, God, gigs are good, aren't they? And I had it's still really like crystal clear in my memory. And then you saw, I don't know, lots of all the sort of punky people and all that. I remember particularly enjoying an Undertones gig. That was really fun.
So this is still in Cambridge. This is
that was all at the Corn Exchange. That was You've probably been to the Corn Exchange. So it's a real huge thrill when we get to finally play there. Where you think of the place where you used to go as a kid, and then when it's got very, very small dressing rooms for such a large venue, which is surprising. So I'm going to tell you a story now that's going to embarrass my wife, but it's a really good story. I went to see Nanci Griffith there, who's I was sort of vaguely friendly with, and my friend Clive Gregson was her guitarist, and we went to watch her, and Clive said, come back afterwards. So my wife came back as well, and she's like, well, I mean, I don't really like meeting people after gigs. I'd rather just go and think that was nice. So, but okay. So we're all standing in this tiny dressing room, and we're all like really close like that, like our faces here and here. And I sort of like, to break the silence, I said, I really like that new song that you played, Nanci, which is called Wonderful. And it's a really lovely song. And it was about her stepdad and what a wonderful, wonderful man he was. And it was a beautiful sentiment, beautiful tune. And she said, yeah, he meant so much to me. And then my wife decided to pipe up just so she'd be there. She said, yes. Yes, I really sort of identified with that song. And so Nanci turned to her and said, "Oh, have you got step parents?" And my wife panicked and went, "I don't know." So
do you find post gig small talk is quite hard?
it's really difficult. You played some songs. Yeah, I did. That's it really, isn't it?
Yeah.
Mark,
And also that whole thing about what to say to somebody. Dave and I was talking about what to say to somebody who's a mate and you've been to see them and you didn't think it was very good. And there's a whole repertoire of phrases that you can use that they're honest, but they don't give the game away because you've done it again. And what a night! Only you could put on a show like that.
Yes. Hang on a minute. I've heard all of these.
Yeah. I love you've done it again, though. It's great.
Yeah.
Oh dear. So, how are you finding it in Glasgow then?
I love it. I've got lots of friends here. I mean, one of the reasons I moved here is that I realized I was about 3 years ago. I was walking through the park and I kept meeting people that I knew for different reasons. Obviously, I work with Eddie Reader and she lives here, but actually there's a friend of mine called Finley Napier who lives over there that I produced. There's a fantastic recording engineer called Mark Freegard, who I don't know if you've heard of him, but he's probably done quite a few of your favorite records like Delamitris and stuff like that.
All right.
And I with Chris Drever, I don't know if you know him, and me and two other fellas have taken over his old space, which is right by where the COP26 is happening. So it's just fantastic place to be a musician and have pals and stuff. So
Right. How does it work for you with touring? Because I mean, is most of your work down in England, or
it is? Yeah, but a train you can get down to London in 4 hours. It's not.
Right.
I do a lot of it on the train, or if I'm with Eddie, or I've just done a tour with a friend of mine called Heidi Talbot, and we just did it in the car. It was fine,
How did it feel to hear you've had all sorts of people covering your songs, haven't you?
Yeah.
Mel C and Katie Lang and various people, David McCalmont and stuff. How did it feel to hear, say, Katie Lang singing one of your songs on the radio?
Oh, it was mental. It's amazing, and that totally is when I used to stand in front of people and sing. That's all. That was the biggest thing that I was wanting to happen. I love performing. I love being in a band and something. But when someone does one of your songs, it's still the most amazing feeling, and it doesn't go away. I would say about half of the stuff in the lockup is because I tragically I will sit and buy records that I've got songs on. Well, I'm not hurting anyone. It's a bit of a strange hobby, but that's what I do. So,
Why wouldn't you?
Yeah.
And how did you get the Fever Pitch gig, as it were?
Oh, because
did you know Nick Hornby at the time?
We did know Nick. There was a little.
He was a big admirer of the Bible, wasn't he? I think.
Yeah, he was. It was very nice for him to ask us. A lot of trust that he put in us. But there was Nick. There was a guy called Nick Coleman as well. I don't know if you've read his book, The Night Train, which is about Nick was the for the Independent was the main reviewer.
Yeah.
Oh, right. Because
he lost
his hearing. He wrote a really moving book about not being able to hear.
That's the book. Yeah. So there was Nick, there was the other Nick, and then there was my friend Derek, who he works. He used to run a indie distribution thing called Bax in Norwich. It was part of the cartel. And now he sells pork pies with his wife, which is fair enough. But but he was the one that we thought was gonna, because the two Nicks, pretty good. But it actually was Nick Hornby, who's incredible. What an incredible thing. But when I knew him, he was a teacher and he was really nice. And sometimes I would stay, if I played in London, we might go around his flat and stuff like that, because he lived off Tottenham Court Road, I think, if memory serves me.
Right.
So, yeah, it was total nepotism. He put us in his book 31 songs as well. And one of an early Bible song is in that. And in the book, he said I was myopic. I'm not myopic, so I don't speak to him anymore.
So what's your next plans? Do you have plans?
Oh yes, I've always got plans. I've just had a record out yesterday. It's over there, so I can't be bothered to get it. But no, I've got.
It's very, there's low key promotion and there's low key promotion.
Not being
Go
able
and
to
get
go
the
and
record.
record that's just literally 3 feet away.
Hang on a minute, just a minute.
It does seem extraordinarily unenergetic.
I can't be bothered to get the record.
That's the softest of cells I think I've ever seen.
Okay, here it comes.
Manager will be tearing his hair out.
Yeah.
So this is a album of songs, but it's a bit like Elton John's Lockdown album. It's all people I met during lockdown, and it's nice. It's really
Right. What's it called?
What's it called?
It's called Singularities, and it's there's a really nice man in Slovakia called Vlado Nozel, and I wrote some of it with him. And he had seen me at Croydon Folk Club about 5 years ago. He's like the trendiest man in Slovakia, which is cool. And we would write once a week, but sometimes the internet would go down, so he'd have to drive around Bratislava and find a free Wi-Fi and sit in the back of his car with his guitar. So that him. There's a nice man called Brian Johnson who I just met at one of my workshops. I'd run workshops and stuff like that.
Yeah, you do sort of masterclasses, don't you, in songwriting?
Yeah, I love it. It's brilliant. And sometimes people.
And how does that work? Because Chris Difford does a lot of those. We talked to him about.
Well, mine are different. Mine are more boot campy or whatever, and then I will also help afterwards with like people getting releases and stuff like that. So it's not so much a retreat; it's actually like a sort of booster course. So the third person is Jenny Sturgeon. I did stuff with her, and she came on one of my courses, and now she's way more successful than I am now. So, which is a bit annoying, but that's. But it happened by accident. I was playing in Glasgow actually, probably 20 years ago, and some Danish people came up to me and said, "Would you like to come and run something in a beautiful island called Samso, which is in between the Copenhagen Island and Jutland?" And I did that 5 years running, and I got a real taste for just passing stuff on. It's really just brilliant, and people do go on and do well or achieve their own personal sort of things. Like I want to write a song from our silver wedding anniversary or something like that. So it's not just success. So it's just doing something good. I love it.
That's fantastic. So you advise them on how to do that, on what lyric to find.
And see it through. In fact, after I'm speaking to you today, I'm speaking to 2 people who've come on courses, and I'm going to help them. Because it's always very mysterious, isn't it? Making music, they make it seem mysterious. So I try and demystify it and say, if you did this will happen, and you can speak to this person, and they'll help you and stuff like that. And it's kind of
what do you think?
Part of my life.
You're a very experienced songwriter. What do you find yourself saying most often to younger songwriters when they're coming along?
It's often just getting a sense of a real handle on what you're trying to say, a real handle on the structure, and a real handle on melody, which sounds really obvious, but it's incredible how much you can transform someone just by making them think about those things. It's totally what happened with the Beatles playing in Hamburg, is like playing all these covers. Oh, that one's a good one. Why is that one a good one? It's just that. Because sometimes a young person or a person who's...
Well, in that case, they found out because they were getting audience reaction. It was all based on how the crowd reacted. And if they didn't like something, they'd change it or they'd drop it or they'd modify it or whatever. It's
exactly. So sometimes when someone really talented, younger or whatever, and they play me something and it's great, but I kind of say to them, if you took that bit there and put that there and blah, 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 and then they do it and they go, wow, but it's not it's not magic. It's just from doing it a long time. And sometimes people are just let down by like going on too long, or that bit should happen twice. All that, nothing too much, but it's good. And then once it's in there, I did a brilliant thing. Like Richard Thomas came to talk at one of my things once, and he said a fantastic thing. He writes all the time, and he says not all of it's great, but if you do it all the time and you think about all these things, it keeps the shop open, and that's just brilliant. So Richard will give himself.
That's the McCartney approach, I think, isn't it?
Yeah, you just keep
never stops. Yeah,
never stop. If you keep your your chops up, when the brilliant idea comes, which you've got it.
Give us some examples of some songwriters you always thought were particularly impressive and influential on you.
Yes, I love Tom Waits, and even though you just told me, I've forgotten his wife's name again, and she's my favourite.
Kathleen Brennan. Yeah,
it's all happening exactly the same again. So I love her. Actually, I've got a plate up here with Dolly Parton. I didn't mention her. I've got a sort of. I think Dolly Parton's amazing. I love Macca. Obviously, I've got his book. But in my people I've met, probably Steve Earle's been the biggest influence on my writing of sort of getting to the point and being direct, and yet saying something of import, perhaps. So my favorite quote, and it's kind of in my head a lot, and I share it with people, is the Paul Simon quote where he says, "The art of songwriting is making the complicated sound simple."
Yeah,
love that. Yeah.
So you talk about people like Paul McCartney who writes a lot, Richard Thompson writes a lot. Do you write a lot?
Yes, I do. I mean, I do, and I've got lots of people that I write with, which is most of my friends friendships have come through songwriting. So yes, I do write a lot because I love it. I'm making a new record as well at the moment, and I just all the way through lockdown I wrote all the time. I've been very lucky. I feel very lucky that we're here, and I enjoyed being at home because I've been on the road so much. So it made me rethink a little bit, because every day I get up and write a song for one project or another, and it was a total joy. And I sort of rediscovered my.
You would literally sit down and think, right, I'm going to try in an hour's time or whatever to come up with a song.
Yeah.
That's the only way to do it, isn't it? I mean,
yes, you've got
people who don't write songs have this kind of ridiculously outmoded idea that it's a romantic thing, and you sit around waiting to be visited by the muse.
It's walking around in a puffy shirt in a field and stuff like that.
Right? Yeah. Whereas Lennon McCartney used to say, right, we're meeting on Thursday, we're writing 2 songs by lunchtime, and we're recording them on Friday. That's
right. That's, in Motown, that's what they do. They go to work. That's how the Same Old Song came into being, as Berry Gordy said, and I can't remember which the other song was, said to them, "I really like that song you've just done. Can you write another one just like that?" So they wrote the Same Old Song. So, you're going to work.
That's true. I never thought of that.
I never knew that.
Well, Bruce Springsteen, Dancing in the Dark.
Yeah.
Because he'd done the whole of Born in the USA.
That's right.
John Landau said it needs a hit.
Yeah.
He says you can't start a fire without a spark. That was the hit.
That was the hit. And it's true. You've got to go to work, but that doesn't mean the inspiration doesn't come. But you've got to go. You've got to be at work. Otherwise, the moment of inspiration sort of disappears.
Yeah. How do you manage to keep things separate? I mean, because if you're working on 4 or 5 songs, let's say, on your own or with various collaborators, how do you stop things leaking from one into the other, or is that just inevitable? You'll do that.
Occasionally it happens a little bit, but that's okay. If they inform each other, there might be a chord change in one that I like a year later. I go, oh, that's appeared in that other one as well, and that's more likely to happen than a lyrical idea. But it's and also who you're writing with. It's very different. Some of my writing collaborations of, like, Chris Difford, and I've written a record with him, which is, once he's finished mucking about with his Jules Holland people we're going to record, he sends me a lyric and I turn it into a song. So that's a really particular way of working. We've only written one song together in a room together, and I believe that that's true with him and Glenn as well. So that's his method, and it's wonderful. You get this tranche of fantastic notions and ideas. So that's how I work with him. There are other people where it's very, very collaborative. There are other people where I will provide the words to their music and stuff like that. So it's always different. So they don't tend to leak into each other, because because the environments are always different. I've gone really boring. I'm sorry.
No, not remarkable. I love all this sort of stuff. I'm fascinated by Bernie Taupin Elton John used to get lyrics faxed through by Bernie Taupin. They would arrive at, say, 11 o'clock. He'd be sitting at a piano in a studio. And he would try and write something in half an hour and attempt to record it that afternoon. You'd think that's insane.
Well,
and the strike rate wasn't terribly high, but now and again there'd be an absolutely sensational.
Yes, I know that firsthand because Greg Penny, who produced Eddie's album that was successful that she won the Brits with and stuff, he got because of that he got the gig to do the next Elton John record, and they were all set up in air, and that's exactly what would happen. They'd all be set up, all the sounds would be ready. If he got a song in half an hour, they'd record it. If they didn't, he'd go home.
Yeah,
amazing.
It is amazing. It's incredible.
Mark King from Level 42 was once, there was talk of him, would you like to write a song with Bernie Taupin? Bernie Taupin's really keen to do it. Oh, okay. As Mark King woke up in the morning and his fax machine had run out of paper.
Oh my God.
Because so many Bernie Taupin lyrics, and there was a roll of paper just at any given time. Bernie's got 50 songs about the American Civil War ready to go, in case Elton wants to do it.
Did they do something?
I don't know if
those were ones that they would be ones been rejected, wouldn't they? Just had to go, right, I can finally get rid of this.
He just writes a lot, because if you're writing words on their own,
yes,
and they're not poems, they are words to be made in a song. You can do that quite endlessly. I would.
Yeah. Well, Chris used to call that woodshedding. So, the first time I wrote with Chris, right, and it's a bit of a party trick, but still impressed me. Is I went down to he used to have a studio called Heliocentric. And he said, let's write some songs together. And I said, I'll show you something on the computer. And he was writing songs for what's he called, the fella from Wet Marchipello.
All right, yeah.
And he put a lyric in front of me, and I started singing. He said, that sounds good, keep going. And then he started typing the words in real time, so they were appearing from his brain to me singing them all at the same time. It's a good party trick.
Yes.
You should go on the telly and do that. That's good,
Well, look, we traditionally climax these conversations, Boo, by asking people to tell us or show us if they got it.
Well, I can't.
What is the greatest record ever made?
Well, that's
I feel that you would have the answer.
There is no wrong answer, Dave, and I think of this as an educational process.
Well,
we're learning all the time.
Yeah, I thought it's a very subjective thing, isn't it? No, I've got probably the greatest single ever made for me. It's either God Only Knows or Wichita Lineman. It's one of the two, and probably today I know that's what everyone says, but it really did affect me. And we were very, very lucky to hang around with him. Me and Eddie did some gigs with him at the Bottom Line in New York, and I got to.
Who's this? Glenn Campbell or Jim Webb?
No, Jimmy Webb. Sorry, Jimmy Webb.
All right. Okay.
So it was really fascinating, and got to hang about with him. But the bit I really liked him is he says, I wish people understood my songs a bit better. I said, what do you mean? He said, well, I got an email from a woman today saying, at the end of Wichita Lineman, does the guy die? She thought he was sort of hanging. That's kind of spoilt it a bit for me. Still on the line. There he is.
Never crossed my mind. That's a terrible image. This sort of fizzing on the wire. Oh God Almighty!
It wasn't finished either when he sent it to Glenn Campbell.
No.
So,
he'd already recorded it. He said that. He said, "This is what I've got so far," and the next thing he knew, it had been recorded.
So it's very interesting. It was interesting. So to be able to speak to him firsthand and hear those things, and I'm a massive fan of karaoke's bass playing and stuff like that. So I just really love it, and I know it's a bit obvious, but when push comes to shove, that's often the one. But in terms of albums, it's much more subjective. When I was a kid, we had an uncle in America. It was our glamorous uncle. I think he left under some sort of cloud. He was my grandfather's brother, and he lived in Oregon, and he used to send us a picture every year of it was called Ernest Palfrey, and it was Ernest Palfrey's, I don't know what it was, but there was a picture of a forklift truck, and we assumed it was our rich uncle who'd got a forklift truck company, and he paid for me and my sister to go over. When we landed in Chicago, I'd never been abroad before. We landed in Chicago, then had to go across O'Hare to Portland. I was 15, and I was with my 12 or 11-year-old sister. No, just my parents said, off you go. And we landed, and while we'd been in the air, Elvis Presley had died. So we landed in Chicago, and people crying, obviously. But we didn't know the news. I just thought we'd landed in the most depressed country in the world.
Well, that's not much of a welcome.
That's where the blues comes from.
Yeah. So I thought, they're all so unhappy. So yeah, we spent time with him, and we got there, and he actually lived in a little shack in the woods, and he had one forklift truck which he'd rent out. That was his business. So we had a bit incredible summer there. We went down to see his son in LA, and I remember we flew there, and the pollution was so bad then. In the distance you could see this yellow dome, and that was LA, the pollution. And then we went to see one of his old colleagues who killed cats so that they could be used for students, veterinarians. So we went to his place. That was a really strange summer, really strange summer. But I discovered cutouts. Do you remember cutouts where
deletions kind of?
Yeah. So they'd cut them out, and then they could sell them for 49 cents. And I bought Rare Stamps by Eddie Floyd for 49 cents, which was a compilation of all his like Knock on Wood, Big Bird, things like that. And I know it's not the greatest record ever made, but it's probably the record that affected me the most. Like Steve Cropper and all that the fantastic grooves, fantastic tight writing and stuff. So I know it's not the best record ever made, but it's not mind,
far off.
Yeah. So I was thinking about that. I was thinking, should I say No Parlay or something like that? But no.
No Parlay's becoming an absolute standard because it's the record, isn't it, that's most seen in charity shops.
Yes.
People have most got rid of.
No, that's unkind. I actually wrote something with Paul Young on one of his records. I don't mean it in any other. I was thinking of ones that people might say.
Mainstream,
But that in terms of the effect on me, that would be it.
Absolutely.
I think. Yeah.
Eddie Floyd. Can't go wrong with Eddie Floyd. Boo, it's been lovely talking to you.
Oh,
fantastic
to you. Thank you.
Thanks so much for doing it.
Yeah.
And we'll
plug
your CD even if you don't.
Yes. Oh yeah. This is the greatest record ever made. That's too
there you go. There you go.
Word in Your Attic, a Zoom with a View.